This tutorial is going to show you how to set up a typical Adobe Illustrator document. There are a few steps that will make it easier to work on your document after you get started. So when you have your Adobe Illustrator open, you won't see anything in there. You won't see a blank document or anything like that. There's not even a background. So the picture you see is the desktop picture. So I'm going to go to New, and I'll create, and I'll get this dialog window. You can title it anything that you want from the beginning. It'll have some size, like in this case it's a letter size. You're able to change the width and the height. In this case the units are points, but you could use millimeters or centimeters or inches or whatever else it is that you're familiar with. You can also change the orientation from vertical to horizontal here. It is possible after you have the document open to change it from vertical to horizontal and horizontal to vertical. So if you get that wrong, it's not hard to fix later on. Right down here, it's very important that you see you've got your color scheme. This color mode says CMYK. That's a printing color mode, but I think a lot of documents are going to be made for internet purposes, and what you'll probably want to do is choose the RGB mode so that the display you see on the screen is exactly what the display will be when it's shown on the web. So I'm going to click OK, and here's my document in vertical format. Again, I'll just show you, here's a tool called the Artboard tool. It's over here towards the bottom of the toolbar, and with that you're able to resize and reconfigure your document. If you're working on it and suddenly you run out of space, you can, if you need to, pull it over and add additional space. It makes it very easy. So I'm going to go back to what I originally had, and I'll show you a couple more features. One thing would be to have rulers visible. Often you need to know the measurements of things. To make the rulers appear, you press Command R. You may or may not have seen them. They appear right up here on the top and here on the left-hand side. Command R hides them or shows them. It's called a toggle switch. When you have them up, if you take your cursor and if you right-click in it, again, you're able to change the units that are displayed to centimeters, millimeters, or something that's familiar to you. Another thing that can be very useful is to use a grid. Quite often you need to make things to precise sizes, and if you hit the Command or Control key plus the apostrophe, a grid will show or a grid will hide. It's show and hide. Again, that's a toggle feature. Do notice when you make the grid that it does have some somewhat darker squares. I'm going to zoom back out. They have these darker collection of squares, and they are 8 across here in the graph. 8 across and 8 down. If you look over to the edge, on the left-hand side it's going to start with 8, but on the right-hand side it doesn't always end perfectly at 8. So if you're trying to divide things evenly down the middle, it might help if you use your Artboard tool and increase the size of this so that it reaches one of those even increments. So now I have 8 squares, or I guess 8 grid marks here on the right hand side as well. Go back to full screen. Another thing that can be useful to you is making guides. Guides can be pulled out of the ruler. So what you'll do is you'll take your cursor and you'll hover over the ruler. You're going to click and hold, and as you come down, a guide should appear, and wherever you let it go, that's where it's going to stay. It is possible with the selection tool, which is keyboard shortcut letter V, it is possible to grab those guides and move them. Now this particular guide is not moving even though I'm grabbing it, and the reason is because that guide is probably locked. So I'll make a couple of guides. You can modify the guides In fact, all the commands having to do with the guides are here under the View menu in the top menu bar. You can hide the guides. Well, actually, I hid the grid there, sorry. You can hide the guides. You can show the guides again. If you want, in this particular case, the guides are locked. That's why I couldn't move them. But when I uncheck that, now I can grab that guide and I should be able to move it to a new place. Also, if a guide is irritating to you and it's selected, then if you press the delete key, you can make that guide disappear. In order to grab a guide, you don't have to click exactly on it, although in this instance I'm on it, so I've gotten it. I like to just drag through it and then I can grab it that way. However, if you have a guide that you want to get rid of, in fact, if you want to get rid of all the guides, you can go here to the View menu and you can clear all the guides. One good thing about locking the guides is that it prevents them from being manipulated when you're doing some of your operations. So here I will lock the guide. I'm going to make an object. We'll give it a color. We'll make it red. So now I'm going to take this object and I'm going to rotate it. I'll draw a box. Now I've grabbed the red square and the guide, but the guide being locked, it's not going to move. If I want, I can I can unlock the guide. Here's what happens when it's unlocked. If I select the guide and my object, if I go to make a rotation, what's going to happen is all of that's going to rotate. See, the whole guide, everything goes. So in order to prevent that from happening, what you want to do is go to View and Guides and lock it so that when you rotate that object, it's not going to also rotate the guide. Those are some of the tools for helping you create your documents with precision, especially the ruler tools and the grids. Again, all of that can be shown or hidden with the Command key and the apostrophe, or the Command key and the R.